So after our last video, you might be wondering, well, when do I move up in the tools? Like, when do I go from a harness to a martingale? Or when do I go from a martingale to a slip? Or when do I go from a slip to a prong? So, we actually generally skip the slip collar because we can get it done faster if they are pulling really hard on a slip. Or they're pulling really hard on the martingale, we generally actually avoid the slip collar, which we have an example of. They're your classic chokers. I don't like them. They get stuck on the links. They don't release really easily. They kind of just suck. So if they are not working well on the martingale, which is what he wears as his everyday collar, we go to a prong collar, which works for me in about 1 to 2 corrections. And this is our last line of defense. And our second last line of defense would be canny collar. But a lot of dogs don't do well on a head halter. Gonna be our model. Let's not lose that. So this one is a head halter. Bear really dislikes head halters. So this one goes around their neck. And canny collars are just so gorgeous. And then it slips over their nose. And then you would pull from the back. These are really good to start training. But if your dog is at the point of where they don't pull anymore, it'll actually slip off of their nose, which you don't want. That's what I've found with these. We also got one that's too big for her, so we're going to be selling it, actually. Giving it to a home that actually needs it. Because she's working really well on her prong collar. So we have, if the martingale collar doesn't work, after a few starts and stops, they will, and it's worse for them to be consistently pulling on a collar. It's worse for their throat. Try it. Try consistently pulling on your neck. And then after that, try a prong collar, where in 1 to 2 corrections, you stop pulling. Then you just have a kind of itchy sensation. And then eventually you can even phase that out and go back to the martingale. That is my reasoning for going from a martingale to a prong collar. And some dogs may not graduate, and some dogs do graduate back to the martingale collar as long as it is reintroduced properly and all that. And some dogs can go back onto a harness perfectly fine, as long as it's conditioned properly and you're willing to do the work. That is why you would switch from a harness to a martingale if they're pulling way too much on the harness, like pulling you down kind of thing. Then you'd go to a martingale collar, which is what he's wearing with that chain. Sorry, buddy. With this chain, it tightens up so that they can't escape. Now I know you're being such a good model right now, bud. You're a little chunky, but he looks chunky and she looks fucking emaciated, and she's 10 times more. But if they are pulling so much on the harness that they are pulling you over, then you would go to a martingale collar because they can't slip out of that. And if they are still pulling so much, if they are still pulling for 5 to 10 minutes after you switch from the harness to the martingale collar or the flat collar, then if they are pulling that much, the same pressure that even after like start stops, U-turns, that kind of stuff on the martingale, then you would switch to a prong collar with proper techniques. With proper techniques only. We're actually going to make some videos on it, on how it works, but only with proper techniques. Some dogs are really sensitive to it. They only need a light little tug. Some dogs do need a little bit firmer corrections. But I'll do a whole video on why you would want to use one of those. But this is why you would want to move up in the ranks of collars. And honestly, I would skip the whole harness part altogether. They're way too expensive. This one was barely used. But it looks really good. It has full range of motion here. But why not just go straight to the collar? Don't even worry about the whole harness part. Because this harness was $35. You have to remember that. $35, and it's never being used. He's just modeling it for you guys right now. And even then, the harness that he will be wearing in public is this one. Because we don't want people to be petting him right now. Because he's still very, very skittish around people. And this one even has really good range of motion. In fact, we have one of these for Bear. But even this would be really nice, just with the do not pets. And then in our next video, we'll talk about why you would want to use an e-collar. See you guys then.